and that was interesting. All right, we're back. We are COMP1073 in the winter 2017 semester here at Georgian. We're week 12, part 2 of our broadcast. We're talking about, we're kind of doing an intro to CreateJS, that library, with TypeScript, and we'll talk about what that is. So in the past, we've used a starter project, and we moved on from there. What I'd like you to do is watch while I create stuff this time. So don't do it with me yet. I'm going to make a new project completely, so a new folder. And it's COMP1073, winter 2017. And it's lesson 12, right? In here, I know what I'm going to need. I'm going to give you the kind of the idea of what you would need. In my folder, I'm going to have other folders, like my assets folder. In my assets folder, I'm going to have other folders. One of them is going to be called my images folder, right? So that's inside. It's just folder structure stuff, right? And another folder for content, right? And another folder for scripts, right? Those are the things that I need. So those basic, setup for the actual project folders. What I'm going to do here in Visual Studio Code, pull this project in, right? And I'm going to define everything as we need it, right? Now, I'm not using my web config yet, but I'll pull whatever I need in as I need it, right? One thing I do need is a index.html page, just like normal. Now, my index.html page is very simple for this one. So here's my doc type, right, which is HTML, as well as an HTML tag. Inside there, I'm going to have a head tag. Next to that, I'm going to have a body tag. Oops, body tag, right? And inside my head tag, I'm going to have a title, which is kind of CreateJS, or intro to CreateJS, intro to CreateJS. There we go, right? And I need to have any kind of style sheets referred here. I'm going to put my style sheet in my contents. I'm going to make a new file here. So I'm going to call this game or app.css. Let's call it that, like we normally do. And this is where my custom CSS lives here. We've done this before. You've seen this kind of stuff. I haven't done it in a while, right? So it's a review. And in my index.html, I want to refer to that, right? So I'm going to go to content, right? And inside my content folder, I'm going to look at app.css. So that's where that's coming from. So it's linking to my content. A lot of times what we also want to put in is a / to indicate that it's in the same folder, relative path, right? Cool. Our HTML is going to also have a language of English, right? That's what we're going to put in there, right? We'll also include some meta tags, right? If we want to do something that is more mobile compatible, where my character set is equal to UTF-8. You've seen this before as well. Oops. And also another meta tag I like to put in is the content is equal to, name is equal to viewport, and content is equal to width is equal to device dash width. Initial scale is equal to 1. And now we haven't had to worry about all these things before, and I'm not going to worry about them now. They're just simply there to help you when it comes to anything that's mobile. Okay, so this is mobile. These are meta tags for mobile. This one here for sure. This one here is just for the character set, so the browser doesn't complain. And we've got everything basically we need from our HTML file. We also need something new, which is a canvas element. This is where our ad is going to live right now, our canvas element, right? Our canvas element, I want you to think of our canvas as literally a canvas. If you're an artist and you're drawing something on a canvas, you have a big white canvas, let's say, and I'm able to use some kind of paintbrush and draw on the canvas, right? That's neat, that whole idea. The other way to think about a canvas in HTML, because this is the HTML canvas is what I'm using, right? It's an element, and the element itself is a container for where my motion graphics is going to live. All right, I want you to think about my canvas in another way as a whiteboard, where I can draw stuff on the whiteboard, and then I'm going to erase the whiteboard and then redraw that stuff over and over again 60 times every second, right? So I'm going to erase and redraw everything 60 times every second. That's how it's going to work, okay? Why is that? Because it gives us the ability, if I refresh my canvas, the container that is my canvas 60 times every second. That means 1 every 60 milliseconds. Once every 60 milliseconds, I'm going to refresh or redraw everything in that area, right? It gives me the ability to animate or move things around, or it'll look to us, you know, like something is moving across the screen, right? That something is animated, okay? It's a trick. All animation, in fact, is a trick, right? The reason why animation works, think about a flip book. You ever do a flip book? You ever have a little notebook and you draw something in the notebook, draw the other page and the other page, and you kind of create a little animation? It's a trick. It works for us because our persistence of vision, and if I was going to look at persistence of vision for a second to talk about this, so human persistence of vision. It kind of talks about, and Wikipedia has a pretty good idea about what this is, right? The optical illusion that occurs when visual perception of an object does not cease for some time after the rays of light proceeding from it have ceased to enter the eye. Another way of saying this is how fast our eye refreshes. We have a refresh rate too, right? Our eye, right? And it's probably close between 24 and 30 frames per second. Okay, why? Whenever we watch a movie, right? And that's a good example of that. I watch a movie, right? And when I'm watching a movie, it looks to me like the images are moving across the screen, but nothing is really happening. There's no actual actors in front of me moving across the screen. The illusion of the, you know, when I'm watching a movie is each of the frames of the movie, which there are 60 frames every second, or 30 frames actually in the movie theater, roughly. I'm sorry to say that. Movie theaters now still only broadcast at 30 frames per second, right? 30 times a second, it changes the image, right? And it's so fast for our eye is too slow to see the changes. It looks smooth, right? Where you see the differences is those old Saturday morning cartoons or some manga that are Japanimation anime, right? You might see the, you know, the frames flipping a little slower because their frame rate is like 12 frames per second, right? You know, when you're going that slow, you can see the differences. You can see that there's a bit of jerkiness when there's the animation moving across the screen, right? But for the most part, because our human persistence of vision, you know, between 24 and 30 frames per second, we can fool our eyes to thinking that something is smoothly animating across the screen, okay? So going with that idea, right? And we're going to talk about other little ideas here today too, right? Inside of our canvas, this is just going to create a border, a box, where we want everything to live. Okay. If I'm going to go with the idea that I want to make an ad, right? And I want to help you build it, right? I want to go into my my ad requirements. Let's take a look at this. Let's see the kind of sizes that I can use, all right, for my ad, right? So remember, I asked you to use a certain size, right, in the last video. And one of the sizes I said was something like 320 by 100, a mobile banner ad. I can also do 250 by 250 or some other kind of thing, right? Now I'm going to make use of the biggest one I can, which is 250 by 250. It's a square. And so you can see what it looks like. What does 250 by 250 really look like? How big is it, right? So inside of my canvas, I can specify a width and a height. So I can say width is equal to 250, and height, right, is equal to 250. These are attributes, width and height attributes that belong to the canvas element. So this is a square. That's what this is. Normally, also what I like to do is hook into my canvas. Remember, we're still going to hook into it with JavaScript, which means I need an ID, right? So I need an ID, and I'm just going to call this canvas, right? You can call it whatever you like. You can also call it ad or something else, main ad or banner ad or whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to call it canvas. Cool. So we got our canvas element. Nice, nice. And what I want to do here is in my app.css, we're going to write a little bit of CSS here today. I'm just going to specify that my canvas, anything that has a canvas ID, I want there to be a border, right, that is 1 pixel solid black. That's what I want the border to be, right? So 1 pixel solid black border that goes around the canvas, right? That's all I want, okay? Now, if I run this thing, so if I go into open in terminal for a second, and if I was to run this thing with light server, then I should see this, right? So I actually see an image on my screen, right? By default, this is the 250 by 250. That would be the biggest banner or banner ad or ad you can make, right? And if you notice, it's clearly defined where this thing is, right, on the canvas. This is it. Anything inside here is where all my action is going to happen. Anything outside here, that's your page, right? So wherever you put this thing on the page, you're going to have action, all right? Lights, camera, action. You're going to have a little movie playing in here. You can do whatever you want. This will be your whiteboard where I can erase and write again, 60 frames per second, all right? On that, when we talk about erasing and redrawing, this is not relative, all right? I'm not using relative coordinate systems here. This is absolute positioning, okay? Inside of here, inside of this banner ad, right? Normally, when we do Cartesian geometry, any kind of geometry at all, when we do X and Y coordinates, right? Because we're going to be dealing with X and Y coordinates, right? X along the horizontal and Y across the vertical, right? Just like math. Normally, we start at the bottom left corner, yeah? 0 would be down here, X goes across this, and Y goes up, right? Not so with most computer graphics. Most of the time, you're going to be starting on the top left corner, right? You're going to be going across and down, right? And that means that positive X happens across this top portion, and positive Y actually goes down the screen this way, which can be a little confusing for people, okay? It's not this way, right? Let me draw this out in Fireworks for a second, right? So let's make my 250 by 250. I'm just going to simulate this thing. Here's my 250 by 250, right? And let's suppose I have my ad that lives in here, right? Here's my 250 by 250 ad. Let's make it exactly 250 by 250 with a better color than that, right? And we'll start at 0, 0, 0, 0, right? Cool. So there's 0, 0. And notice if I go to the top left corner, how my X and Y coordinates go to 0, right? Right here. Anything above here is negative Y, right? And still X is positive on this side, right? Anything to the left of this point is negative X, right? So negative X and negative Y up here. Positive X and positive Y are down here. Negative X and positive Y are down here, right? Make sense? These are the quadrants that we're talking about, these 4 areas, right? So we really want to draw in here where positive X and positive Y lives, right? And what this means is, let me just change the color to white for a second. What this means is if I was to draw an arrow, right, from the top, if I was going to draw it from the origin, this would be the origin, the 0, 0 point, right? And I'm drawing it to the bottom, right? What it would really look like if I added some, instead of making it yellow, let's make it black. How about that? And I'll make it really big, 4 points, right? So we can see this thing. And imagine I have this arrow that comes from the top. And this is really the direction of where everything is being drawn, right? So I come from the top left to the bottom right. That's the coordinate system that we're using here, okay? Cartesian math, right, or geometry, regular geometry, bottom left to top right. That's totally different. And that would give you a different coordinate system. That's not the coordinate system we're using here. So whenever we use CreateJS, top left to bottom right, okay? Things to know. Something else. CreateJS is going to be using other objects that we're going to make. It's going to be using something called a display list. I'm going to put this together, right? So first we have our canvas. Inside of our canvas, we have a container that's being used by CreateJS. It's a virtual container that we're going to make our entire banner ad visible in, right? It's called the stage, okay? So CreateJS uses something called the stage. And I'll just make it so that you can see this thing, right? So this, just from my color perspective, we'll make it black. Stage, right? There's the stage for CreateJS, right? And again, I also want to draw out my coordinate system. So if I was going to do this, and I'm using the size of our banner ad to do it. So this would be 0, 0, right? So 0, 0, 0, oops, 0.0 would be way over here, right? And just to point out, undo, I just grab this one and move it up the top. There's 0, 0. And we're just going to move my arrows, the one we have here. I'm going to move this down a little bit so you can see it. So this is where 0, 0 is. We're going to move down the stage. This is the actual stage area. This whole thing represents the stage, right? And each of the objects in the stage, for example, let's say I had a button, right? I make a button on the stage like this. And let's say the button, I'm going to make it some kind of blue button. And let's say instead of making it like this, we'll give it a bit of a gradient. right? So instead of a regular fill, we'll make it gradient. And we'll make it so that it looks a little neat. So we'll make it so that it is, I don't know, goes from a lighter blue to a darker blue, something like that. There we go. Linear gradient. Button, right? This is our, let's say we have this button on the stage here like this. And let's say we put in some text on the button. And we'll make the test say, like, you know, click me. There we go. Click me. That's too big, the text. We'll make it a little bit smaller. And we'll make it white, right? So it stands out, so it's legible, right? Click me. We'll choose a smaller text size. Let's say 18. And again, I'm just roughly estimating where it's going to be. Right, there we go, approximately. And you can bump it a little bit in the middle. Cool, we have a click me button, let's say, right? This button here, it's a child of the stage, right? The stage itself is the mother container or the parent container. And anything we put into the stage itself, like this click me button I've drawn, right, would be a child of the stage, right? It's attached to the stage. Now, I want you to think about this. What is the coordinate system? When I draw my button, right, I'm drawing my button. My button is not a real button, right? And my text, if I draw text onto this area here, it's not real text. It's pixels, okay? That means I can't highlight it. I can't connect with it. I can't copy it. I can't paste it. This is not a regular website. This part of the website is a rasterized area, an area that I can physically draw pixel by pixel and erase pixel by pixel. That means I cannot highlight a text object because the text that I put in here is not real text. It's pixels that have been drawn to look like text. Okay, that's what it is. And a pixel is the smallest unit on our screen, right? And what is a pixel anyway? It's just a little square. And if I zoom in here, and I'm going to show you this zooming in thing here, right? So let's say, for example, this is my stage, and I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to zoom in right to the stage here. You can see as I zoom in, I'm going to zoom in right in here. Right, here we go. Here's the pixel, right? You can see that as I zoom in with fireworks here, and I'm just going to kind of scroll up until I can see my stage. Here's my stage. You can see that I got a bit of anti-aliasing here, right? And this is my pixel right here. This is the unit. So if I was actually going to select my pixel, so I want to kind of maybe do a selection. So I kind of want to click right there. How do I do that, right? So I can kind of select. So I'm just doing just kind of select an area. So let's go back to my click me. There we go. And I want to select this area that I'm clicking on, right? And it's not allowing me to. How about we just use one of these? Why is that? Oh, because I'm clicking in there. It's actually a right now for fireworks. It's an actual object. Let me highlight everything here on the stage and flatten my selection to make it a bitmap. There we go. There we go. Now it's a bitmap. Let me just go back to that. So that's what I want you to think about. I want you to think about CreateJS, as using bitmap images, right? So here's my bitmap, right? And as you can see here, this letter, which is, or the arrow, which is what I made, right? So let's go up here to the top where my image is. Here's the A in CreateJS, right? Or stage, right? You can see that this is the smallest unit. That's a pixel, right? So if I'm going to highlight that thing, let's say highlight, you can see that I'm trying to highlight one pixel at a time, right? And I can affect one pixel at a time on the stage, right? But what is a pixel, right? A pixel has a couple of properties. What properties does a pixel have? Anybody? Think about it. A property of a pixel, right? Anybody? Huh? Color, right? Actually, that's the main property, right? The main reason we can even see a pixel is because it has color. And the other thing is it has position. It has a location. So color and position, those are the two things it has, right? Maybe one more thing it has. The color, depending on what kind of color we put in there, it could have a value that's, you know, for example, it has made of 3 values, right? It's made of red, green, and blue, right? RGB, and alpha. So you have an alpha channel. And the alpha means the absence of color, or where the pixel is physically turned off, right? And all you see is some kind of checkerboard pattern, or you're allowed to see something that's underneath, right? So if you actually look at that, if I actually take this pixel, so if I kind of select the pixel, this one, and I only want to, if I lower my tolerance here to like 1, right? So I only care about 1 pixel. If I just click on this pixel, that's the pixel that I'm looking at. And if I physically erase it, right? So if I press like delete, right? You can see that I see this checkerboard pattern right here. So now this pixel is deleted, and actually I see a transparency because I'm using a PNG image. This is a PNG image, right? I'm able to see through the PNG image behind this image, right? That's what's happening here. Again, I'm just showing you this thing just really high level because I want you to understand in the grand scheme of things, when you zoom out, can you see that that pixel is transparent? The answer is no. As I zoom back in again, you can see that I can focus right in on that pixel, right? It's the smallest unit of measure physically on my screen, right? If I undo, right, and put it back and escape, if I want to find out where I am from a pixel perspective, so I click on the screen, I want to find where I am. I'm approximately at around 146 pixels. Look at, there's 144, there's 145, there's 146. That's the X location, right, from a pixel. Notice it starts at the top left corner, right? And from a Y location, I look at the left over here, right? And you can see that here's 72, here's 73. So it's probably 73, so 146 to the right, X, and 73 down. That is where that exact location of the pixel is. And this pixel has a color value, right? So if I actually was to find out what that is, I can use my eyedropper tool to get that color value. Just click it, right? And if I look at the color value is DF, 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 which is 223, 223, 23, R, G, and B, red, green, and blue. Make sense? That particular pixel, this one here, right? So if I hover over it with my eyedropper, right? Maybe it's actually something else. Maybe it's 227 or whatever. E3, E3, E3. There we go. Okay, so it has color and it has position. That's the main things about pixels, right? Now, why am I telling you all this? Because when we draw something on the screen, notice that it's also drawn from the top left corner. Each pixel is drawn from the top left corner, right? So too is our other objects on the screen, right? And I'm just going to zoom out here so you can see what I'm talking about. I got my click me button, right? And if I zoom in my click me button for a second, right? So let's just zoom in on this click me button. You can see that it's going to be drawn from the top left corner too, right? Every object that's inside of the canvas, right, and inside the stage is going to be drawn from the top left corner, unless I specify a different anchor point, okay? I can specify, I'm just going to draw this out here. Imagine if I have an anchor point that starts here, somewhere in the middle of my screen, right? Normally the anchor point is over here, right? The top left corner of my object, right? This also has a local coordinate system, right? So inside of my object, think about this as another container, right? And inside of here, if I was going to just draw this out, it also has a 0, 0 point, right? It's local coordinate system. Okay, I want to talk about this so that way you're not confused later on, because I've been getting some questions with when I do this project that they're like, I don't understand, but I'm trying to get my coordinate system working, and it's just not. I don't know. I don't follow. I don't understand why it's appearing where it's appearing, and so on. Right? This is the 0, 0 point by default. Okay. However, if I move my center point to this, right? Even though this is the 0, 0 point, right? This in world space. Okay. So this is. I'm just going to pull this out here for a second. So 0, 0 in the coordinate space from a world perspective. Global, the global coordinate system of the entire screen or the entire canvas is right here, global. This might be the local coordinate system, local. There's local coordinates and global coordinates. Okay, I want to point that out just so you understand. When we're drawing on the screen, right? Are we good? So local coordinates, global coordinates, we draw from the top left corner, all right? Everything is an object. Anything we draw on the screen becomes an object. And everything we add to the stage becomes a child that's paired or linked to the mother object or the parent object, which is the stage. So my click me button would be a child object of the stage. Okay? Are we good? Now, if you're someone who loves and who's used Flash before, anybody used Flash before? I think someone put up their hand before. Yeah, maybe you've used Flash before. This should be familiar to you, right? Because Flash uses the same kind of hierarchy. In fact, CreateJS, made by Grant Skinner and company, right, was made, they were hired out, or he was hired out to make a JavaScript conversion from Flash, right? So I have a Flash project. I want to convert it to JavaScript. Instead of using ActionScript, I'm going to use CreateJS. And so the same things that you saw in ActionScript, if you're familiar with ActionScript, worked very closely in CreateJS. If you know ActionScript, then you almost know CreateJS. Okay, that's how close it is. We'll talk about that. Are we clear about this though, the drawing thing and how to draw? If you're not, we'll get to it in a second. I'm gonna leave this up for a second and we'll come back. Okay, so we got this 1 pixel drawing. Let's make it, instead of solid, let's make it dotted, right? Because we don't want to make it so heavy duty, so we're making it dotted. And if I go back to the screen, you can see that it's a little bit lighter, right? Now, what if I want to center this thing in the middle? You guys are CSS experts, no? So you guys should know how to center it. How would I center this whole thing so it appears in the middle of my page? Because I mean, on the top left corner is kind of ugly, right? And my screen is pretty blank right now. I don't want to lose your attention with nav bars and all that other stuff. I just want to focus on CreateJS. That's what I made a new project, okay? So if I was going to move this around, I need to surround my canvas object with some kind of div tag, right? So let's suppose I want to have a div tag, right? Oh, why did it give me a span? Div tag. And inside my div tag, I want to kind of put my canvas in there. So I'm going to kind of put my canvas in the div tag. I'm choosing the Option key on Mac or the Alt key on Windows, right? Inside Visual Studio Code. All right, so cool. So I've moved it in there. And now I can define an ID for my canvas, right? And the ID would be something like, you know, main contents. Main content. Maybe capital M, main content. There we go. So anything that has main content, I want it to be centered, right? I want objects to be centered on my screen. How do I do that? How do I say that the main content should be, you know, anything that's inside the canvas that's inside the main content, right? It should be the full kind of centered in my screen. Is there a way of doing that? And remember how to do that with CSS? I know it's not a CSS course. God forbid we should talk about CSS. Yeah, right? So what would I do? Would I do my canvas margin 0 auto, or would I do my main content margin 0 auto? Well, let's see what happens, right? So if I go and do my main content, I think I used capitals, right? I mean, main content. And if I say margin 0 auto, right? 0, again, if you look at the box model, right? You know that the top right, that it goes top right, bottom left. That's the way it goes. So the first number, if you only have 2, you can have 1, 2, or 4, right? Actually, you can have 3 too. 1, 2, 3, or 4. Here's how it works. If you go 0, 0 refers to the top and the bottom, right? Auto is right and left. That's what it refers to. The right and left margins. That's what this 0 auto is, right? So what this does is it says, hey, take whatever I have on the left and the right, and then go, kind of put it in the middle. Now the problem with this one is I put it in the main content. It doesn't know what to do, right? So if I put 0 auto, it still doesn't show anything, right? And if I was going to put just to show a bounding box here, again, this is CSS 101, right? I would do a 1 pixel solid just for now for troubleshooting red, right? Instead of 1 pixel, I'll make it 4. Just to see what's happening here, right? There's that. And why isn't that happening? Margin, border, huh? The what? Oh, yeah. Right? So this is our index. You can see where the div tag is. This is the div tag. And what I want is actually not the div tag itself being 0 auto. It's going to be the canvas. Yeah, that's what I want, right? But I need to give my div tag a little bit of some shape, right? So I'm going to say a width. I'm going to specify a width for my div tag. I can specify 100%, right? And let's make sure that I cover everything properly, right? There's my width tag my width is 100%. Notice now it goes right to the edge, right? And on the left, I still get this little border. How come I'm getting this little border here on the top and the left? Anybody remember? Sorry? We need to normalize this, but you know why? Because the browser is adding in its own styles, right? So I want to get a reset page, a reset CSS. And it's important to try and do this when you're doing this kind of work so you understand, right? So if I get a reset CSS, if I look for that, right, I can go to myerweb.com, my reset CSS, and notice that they have this reset CSS right here. I can actually copy this whole thing, right? And here it is, right? And I want to make another CSS file here. So I'm going to make a new file. We're going to call it reset.css, right? And plop that in there, right? There it is. And that kind of resets everything to the top left. Now, I need to attach it as a script here. So I'm going to kind of do the same thing. So I'm going to grab all this and go over here and plop that in. And it's going to be reset CSS. Now, why would I put it first? Because remember, when we do reset, if I reset after, then everything is going to be reset. So I want to reset first and then apply my own CSS. Now, why I didn't have to do this before? Because Bootstrap has it built in, right? So I don't have to reset with Bootstrap. I'm not using Bootstrap here, so I want to reset everything so that there's no extra margin, all right? To show you this now, if I go back to my files, you can see now that it hugs right on the corner here, right? And again, I'm trying to control my browser as much as I can because we're doing graphics. Whenever we do graphics, right, we want to try and control it so we can see everything on the screen. All right, so I'm just going to reset that, refresh that page for a second. You can see that it should go right to the edge. The reason why it's not doing that is because of my funny application settings. All right, so it's 100%. And what I want to try and do is I want this, this canvas to hover in the middle. Now, what if in the canvas, really quickly, right, I want to put in that margin object. So I'll say margin is equal to 0 auto. Would that work in the canvas? And you can see that, no, it doesn't quite work. And if you want to inspect the page to see what's happening here, right, so I want to put it in the middle. All right, so help me out here. Tell me why it's not working. If I look at the canvas, right, here's 0 auto. Here I'm actually inspecting the canvas element. So again, if I click inspect, there's my canvas, right? By the way, it says 252 by 252, right? You notice that? 252 by, why is 252 by 252? The border is 1 pixel, right? So my canvas element includes the border, right? It adds border to it. That's why it is the way it is, right? All right, cool. So I've got my 0 auto here. But if I click on something else, like if I click on another element, like up here, so let's say, for example, in my body, it's my body, and I go down here into my main content. So this is my div tag. You can see that it has 100% and 4 pixel solid red. Luckily, I can change that if I want to in here, right? But in my canvas element, I want my canvas element to be centered. Is there any other thing I need to do to center this element? Come on, guys. You guys are all HTML, CSS people, right? So what would I do? You would put what? Display who? Display. Oh, flex, the flex box. Oh, flex box. Okay. So where would you put it? On where? On the div tag, right? So you're going to go to div tag and you're going to say display, right? Display flex. Right? And you think that's enough? Well, it did something, right? There it is. How about if I made display block? Would that help as well? Can I display block? No. But display, we need to do something else, right? Right. So display flex is definitely a way to go. That's the new flex box model, right? That's been recently added. I like that. Beautiful. There's our nice little thing in there. It's beautiful. It's in the middle. We don't have to use Bootstrap. Now let's turn off the borders. So when you do this, and you can see now that it's here at the top in the middle of the screen. Okay, cool. How about the background? I want the background to be gray, but I want my canvas to be white, right? How do I do that? So again, I'm going to have to talk about the background, which would be the body element, no? Right? So the body element, I want to style my body element, and I want to make the background color, right? So background as color, I want to make that something else, like maybe gray, right? And I want my canvas, the background color of my canvas, to be white. Background as color, just to make it different, white. Okay, there we go. And let's make that border a little bit thicker and solid so we can see it. And we can add border shadows and all that stuff. But you can see now how it works out. So this is where our stuff will live, right? And I've made this all gray on purpose, right? Because I don't want you to focus your eyes there. I want you to focus your eyes in the middle of the screen where we're going to do our action. Okay? So our canvas, just to recap, is just an element. And we're filling it with stuff right now, right? It's a special element that we can control with CreateJS, right? And what I want to do here is I want to get the libraries that I need and put them into my scripts folder. I'm going to use Bower to do this. I know this, right? Because I'm not going to go and kind of manually do it on my own, because that never makes sense. So I'm going to right-click here and add a new file, right? and it's going to be the Bower RC file that you've seen me create before, right? Where I'm going to specify the directory as scripts lib. That's where I want everything to live. Inside my scripts folder, my lib folder, that's where my Bower is going to work, right? Cool. I also want to have a readme.md file. So readme.md. There it is. And inside my readme.md, I'm going to specify that this is, COMP1073, winter 2017. I can actually type it today. And then it's lesson 12, right? That's what I'm putting in here. Okay, it's lesson 12. And inside here, inside on the bottom, I'll use a double hash, right? Where I'm going to specify that intro to CreateJS, right? Using TypeScript. We're going to talk about TypeScript, yes. That's the actual README file. We've got that going on like normal, right? And we need a bunch of other stuff in here as well. But let's use the terminal window to do that. So I'm going to kind of stop this in my terminal. I'm going to clear the screen. And let's use Bower init to initialize my project, right? I'm going to specify my project as COMP1073, winter 2017, lesson 12, all lowercase, right? My description is intro to CreateJS using TypeScript. And the main file will leave blank. Keywords is CreateJS. If we're going to share anything, CreateJS, and we're going to use TypeScript. I think those are the two things we're going to use here. Right? And that's me. Licensure, homepage, we don't have one right now, and we'll add everything and press enter. Yay. I also want to specify that any node modules that I use are not going to be included in here, right? Because I'm going to use Node, the NPM package manager, to do everything as well. So I'm going to use both Bower for CreateJS and NPM for TypeScript to get me some code hinting, right? So I need a .gitignore file too, because I'm going to put it up on Git. So .gitignore. This is all review, by the way, guys, right? And I want to ignore my node modules. I want to ignore that file, right? So anything that it's inside my node modules folder, which I don't have yet, it's going to be ignored, all right? So I'm building up my application just like normal, right? Everything that you've seen before. Nothing new at this point. Okay, cool. Let's install my Node package manager in here, right? So I want to put Node in here, and I'm going to do an npm init, okay? And again, I'm going to specify COMP1073, W2017, and then it's lesson 12, version 001. I'm okay with that, sure, or 100. Intro to CreateJS. There's a lot of duplication here, but it's okay. Using TypeScript, something simple, similar to what we've done before. There is no entry point, but I'll leave it at index.js. Test commands, there's no test commands, there's no Git repository yet, and the keywords are CreateJS, if we're going to share this thing ever, this node package, or TypeScript. There we go. Author me, and licenses there. It's fine. Excellent. Cool. We've got everything we need to get started. Let's start with my Bower. We're going to do a Bower install like we normally do. And we're going to install those packages that I want, right? I want to get my CreateJS packages. Remember, I wanted Ezel.js, right? I wanted Tween.js. I'll get them all for you, right? Tween.js. I don't need them all. Sound.js, if I was going to get the whole package. And Preload.js, right? And I want to get all these packages and minus save, because I want to save them as development dependencies. I grab all these packages. If it finds everything, it's going to install it nicely inside of my scripts lib folder. Just going to go out to grab all these files. You can see it's grabbing everything. It's taking its sweet time. Wow, it's never done this before. It's because I'm here at the school, right? And it's taking its sweet. Oh, hey, package Tween.js not found. Whoa. Let's see if I did something wrong, right? Because once it breaks, it'll break completely. If I go scripts, right? And if I refresh, scripts, refresh, did it actually grab anything? Let's look at the operating system values. I love when it does this. So again, I'm going to look at COMP1073, and inside the actual value of my script, sometimes it doesn't show it. It didn't do anything, right? It didn't do a darn thing. It didn't grab anything, right? In fact. So it tried to receive information from my preload, but somehow we didn't find a damn thing. And if I look at my bower.json file, it should have anything in here from a requirement perspective. So my dependencies don't show because I didn't download anything, right? Let's try that again, right? So Bower, how about we try Bower search for CreateJS, right? And there they are. I just somehow did not install it properly. I don't know. Let's try this again. Bower install CleanJS, right? -- save. All right. That's good. I don't know why I didn't do it before, but fine, right? Bower folder Thomas. Okay, that's fine. Bower install name can be digital. We're going to do a Ezel.js. Yeah. No. It'd be nice, but that would assume that you would be able to get everything, and you can't, right? Not all at once. I just love it how it's taking forever to download everything. This is pretty crazy. Yay. Okay, cool. And just to search to see if we've got those two things. Here's Ezel and Tween. That's cool. And I want the other parts, which is just for us. We can kind of go with what we have right now, but I want everything, right? And I'll say Bower install sound.js. That's my save. But it's super slow. I can see that right now. Well, it's finding sound.js. Wow. That is like crazy slow today for some reason. Who knows why? Like this will be done normally 2 seconds. Boom. Like if we're talking about like what, 9 meg? How long does 9 meg take nowadays? And last one, but not least, Bower install, right, preload, JS. Some we had problems with it. It didn't find preload, right? So let's see if it finally finds it and installs it. Oh yeah, 6.8 megs. Can't do 6.8 megs. We're rocking in terms of speed today. Cool. All right, let's just make sure that I have everything. You see that on the left. I have all my libraries. Hey, but it wouldn't be enough for me to do this. Remember we talked about with jQuery, I want code hinting, right? I want code hinting because if I don't use code hinting, right, I can't build up my application very easy. I have to look at the API documentation. I'm going to make mistakes. So I want to do this from the get-go. So of course I'm going to use, I'm going to use npm this time to install, right, @types. And I want to install, just like we did. First of all, before we do npm install, I want to search for CreateJS, right? And I want to search for it because I want to see if it actually has it in, right? Now notice it has CreateJS browserify. It has a bunch of stuff. That was pretty fast with npm, right? Like super fast. You can see that I came back with a bunch of stuff that match CreateJS. How about if I do @types? So I'll say clear npm search for @types, CreateJS. Does it have anything like that? And you can see that it certainly does, right? @types. And what about if I did? Remember, I want to use the type hinting. I want to do Ezel.js before I install anything. This is just me testing to see if it's out there, right? And it does. @types, right? Ezel.js, TypeScript, right? Here's what it's found, right? So I want to definitely do that. And notice how it actually, when I do this, it refers to other things as well. So let's try this out. So I'm going to kind of clear the screen, and I want to say npm install @types Ezel.js, right? And --save -dev because it is a development dependency. It's not required to run my app, right? So it's going to run out, grab it, and install it. And it also installed Tween.js for me too, right? I'm just going to do it anyway. So I'm going to do them all. Install @types, and I'll say Tween.js --save -dev. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say npm install @types, and then we'll say sound.js --save -dev, right? And the last one, it already got preload, but I'll do it anyway. npm npm install at types preload.js minus save minus dev. Cool. So I got all my type definitions, right? And they're stored inside node modules. My node modules folder, remember, I don't want to put this up on GitHub because I don't care about this stuff. This is just for me to use locally. I have all these type hinting, this type hinting that I can use to build up my application. Remember, just like jQuery. jQuery, we had no type hinting. This is another library. By the way, this process that I'm showing you works for any other JavaScript library, right? Because now we're into the API section of our course, right? Any other API, right? I'm just showing you one. You can choose any other one, and you can treat it the exact same way. All right, cool. So we've done this. We've done our type hinting, and now we want to include TypeScript. Remember, I'm talking about using TypeScript because I want to use the new ECMAScript 2016 methodology for doing modules and everything else, right? Let's layer that on top. So I'm going to right-click here, new file. I'm going to create a file called tsconfig.json, right? And we've done this before too, right? Where I want to specify compiler options, right? My compiler option should include the following, right? My target, right, should be ES5, right? Which is ECMAScript 5, the older version of ECMAScript, not the newer version, ECMAScript 6, because the ECMAScript 6 is not fully supported with all of its features for all browsers, okay? Next, we also want to specify the module that we're going to be using, right? And the module is typically CommonJS. And the last thing we want to use for sure, right, is source maps. We want to turn our source maps to true to get good code hinting, right? Or debugging in the browser. All right, so that's really cool. Wow, lots of configuration, right? That's why I told you not to do all this. I'm going to put it up on GitHub in a second, right? I just wanted you to see how I did it. Now, for the exam, if I do anything with CreateJS for you or anything else like this, right, I'm going to give you all this. I'm not going to expect you to go download Bower or go to that. It doesn't make sense, right? You're going to have everything right here, okay? All right, now this is this. Now, if I want to transpile, if I want to do any kind of transpilation, I want to set up a task runner, but I don't have any kind of scripts yet to run. I only have my libraries, right? And I want to create my script that I'm going to run. So I'm going to right-click here on scripts, new file, and I'm going to add a new script called app.js. But instead of app.js, what do I want to make it? App.ts, right? My TypeScript file. And just to show this, I'm going to do a closure, right? Remember that iffy that we did before? Same idea. We're going to use a function that's going to run like this, right? This is my iffy. Okay, this is the iffy that we're going to use in my file. And this is going to be my closure or my iffy, right, which is my immediately invoked function expression. You should be able to see this and understand what it is now. Anything that's in here is hidden. It keeps a scope, right? This is our operation scope or our app scope that's in here, right? So anything that's in our iffy we want to use, and I'm just to start off, I'm going to create a couple of functions, okay? So my first function I'm going to have as my start function, right? Very nice and clean. And inside my start function, I want to refer to my main function, all right? So I have my start, I'm going to have my update function and my main function. So I'm going to call my main function from inside there. So main. I don't have my main function yet, but I'm going to do that. I'm just setting up. I'm also going to have an update function. Here's my update, right? And we're going to talk about what this does in a second. And we're also going to have a main function. Here's my main function, right? Inside my main function, right, just to prove that this all works, I'm going to do a console log that says app started, right? There we go, just like we normally do. And none of this will work because I haven't called my start ever. And I'm going to do that here with my window. I'm going to say window.onload, right? Onload is equal to start. All right, so this will start off this main function. As soon as the window load, this main function will kick off, right? And then I'll be able to run my main program. It'll jump from here to here right away. Yes?
Doesn't it like fire itself up after loading?
It does. But how am I going to call my main function, my start, right? I could just call it down here, start, right? But I'm waiting, even so, I'm waiting for the window to load. I'm creating an event to start it anyway, and you're going to see why later. Because remember, my application is not like the other applications we ran already. This application is specifically going to be used for animation, right? How do I add this to your other code, right? Think about that, right? Maybe you have to make it something separate, or maybe you include this, make everything TypeScript in your code. We'll talk about that as well. So here's my application. Now I want to test it, and the way to do that, of course, is Command-Shift-B. Command-Shift-B, it'll ask me to create or Control-Shift-B if you're a non-Mac person, right? It'll configure a task runner. Now you've seen this before, but I'll show it to you again. Here's configure task runner. And now there's some options here. There's one that says TSConfig.json, and the other one is watch mode. What watch mode does is every time I change my TS file, it'll transpile it automatically from TS, TypeScript, to JavaScript automatically. So I don't have to do that hard lifting. Right? It does it all for me. So I'm going to click watch mode, right? And what watch mode does, it creates this little task runner and saves it inside your vscode.task.json. That's where it is. Okay, so save that. And now if I press it again, so if I want to transpile, my app.ts, right, in here. I want to transpile into my app.js. I can do that here, right? But before I do this, this is nice where it is, app.ts. It's inside my scripts folder, but it's way out here in the open, right? My lib folder lives here too. Wouldn't it be nice if it was in its own folder? And today it's going to be. We're going to put it in its own folder, another folder, called core. Some people also call it source, SRC, right? I'm going to take my app.ts and move it in there, right? I'm moving it in there because what I want to do is with my app.ts inside of there, I want to transpile and hold everything in my core folder so it doesn't bleed out inside my scripts folder. Like it doesn't look ugly. That's all. It's just organization. All right? All right, let's transpile. Control-Shift-B, Command-Shift-B on the Mac. When I do that, it actually creates these two other files. My JS file, which is this, looks identical to what I did, right? Just no spaces. And this, my map file, which helps me do things like do troubleshooting, right? Cool. Very cool. Now let's see if it actually runs in the browser. So here's my browser. Cool, right? And I want to run light server. Here it runs. Wait a minute. We never attached it to my index.html, right? We need to do that too. So let's get rid of all this. I'll leave that open for now. And I need to attach it. So it means that over here in my index.html, right, on the bottom, near the bottom of my body, right down here, I want to put a scripts tag, script. In my script tag, I want to specify the source, right, as /scripts/core/app.js, because again, even though it's TS by default, we're writing it in TS, right? But it's being translated to JS when we transpile, right? From TypeScript to JavaScript, right? And then here we are. We have our app.js. This is going to be our scripts section, right? This is nice for app.js. We're missing something here, right? We're missing a couple of other things. And what else are we missing to make this all work? Anybody have an idea? CSS section. Fine. What are we missing here to make this work? Yes, it'll run the way it is, but what if I want to access my modules, right? All those things I have, they're inside of my scripts lib folder, right? All these things. We need to add those in as well, right? So under my scripts section, right, we're going to put some scripts in there as well. I'm just going to use this as a block to copy. So we need 4 of them, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're just going to change this from scripts core to scripts lib. And actually, I probably should have done it the other way, but I want the Ezel.js to be first. So here's the path. Scripts, lib, Ezel.js, lib, and inside there it's going to be Ezel.js, right, .0.8.2.min.js, right? I'm going to copy this one, not the WebGL one, this one. Ooh, did it crash? It just may have. I think I may have just crash-a-rammed my code, right? Close editor. That happens. Yeah. So I'll just get out of this and go back. It happens. sometimes force quit. I have to even go to even further and force quit. Force quit. Yeah. Force quit. Right. This is like Control Alt Delete. Right. And let's just bring up that stuff in a second and make sure we're looking at the right. Yay. Okay. It came up. Cool. Did I keep everything the way I wanted? What do we do with my index.html? Yep, it's cool. I want to show you this. I want to go to scripts lib. Underneath that is going to be Ezel.js and then lib and then ezeljs.min.js. This one, I want to copy this path and I want to kind of pump it in here. So I'm going to kind of do the first one, right? So paste. I don't need all this. I'm going to get rid of all this because this is relative to me. And then just put the dot in there, right? And I'll do the next one. So that's the Ezel.js one. And I'll do sound. Oh, sorry, tween next. Now, your question is going to be, do I really have to do it in this order? And the answer is no. As long as they're before my app, I don't have to, right? So I'm going to copy my path. And I'm doing this, I don't have to type all that path manually myself, right? That's why I'm doing it. Okay, there we go. And we'll do the next one. So that's where I want to put it, right? So my sound will be next. Almost done, guys. Sorry, I'm going to take a short break in a second. I know this is a bit of setup, but I'm explaining this because when you download and install an API, then what ends up happening is, you have to kind of install all the piece parts to it. Now, there's many ways to do this. You can use a CDN, like we talked about last week, right? Or the week before. You could do it with by referring to an external website as well. And we're doing it here locally because we want to test locally. So again, I want to kind of grab that path and then go to my index.html and plop that in there. And just get rid of all that. Put it down. All right. And that's the path to all my libraries. So this is my libraries, right? So if you want to go even more specific, you can say something like, these are my CreateJS libraries. What this is, right? And this down here is my app scripts, right? Specifically my scripts that I write. So app scripts. Okay. And you can make this JavaScript section even longer by putting a bunch of these extra little spaces in there, right? Just to kind of separate it out. And normally I don't like decorating things this way, but what it does for me is it gives the sense of separation from one part to the other. So this is where all my scripts are going to be added to my page. I want you to also think about this. Index.html is my manifest, my app manifest. I told you this before, where everything starts, right? Now, there are alternatives to what I've just shown you. You could use something called an app loader, where you load up all these files with something like Webpack, right? Or with something like Grunt or Gulp, right? You can do all kinds of, or Browserify is the other one that you could use, right? For now, we're going to keep it clean, and we're not doing that kind of automation, so this is what it's doing right now. Okay, cool. So now let's test to see if this is working. So again, I've got my little app running right here. I'm going to go to the bottom, so I'm going to inspect. And what I'm looking to see here in the console is app started, right? And this is something interesting because I'm trying to look for something that's wrong. So I made a mistake, which is fine. But I still get my app started, and it says failed to respond with status of 404. Right, you probably would have seen that. I didn't notice it, but I meant to go .min.js, right? Scripts, lib, right? I kind of typed that all in. It's not combined. It's min.js, what I wanted. Now, if I save, you should see this. Right, cool. I'm ready to put it up on GitHub now. We're ready to go. We've got our app started, and now after the break, we're gonna get down, and you're gonna help me build your first CreateJS application, right? So, how do we do this? Hey, what happened here? How come I'm getting this going on? Huh? Because it's a canvas, and I'm getting some really weird artifacts. An artifact, right? Just needs to be updated. Okay, let's put that together. So I'm gonna go to GitHub. I'm gonna prepare. Right, so preparing is one part of what we're doing with GitHub, and sorry, wrong one. I'll be okay. That's what happens when you get tired, speaking a long time. I want to go here and create something new, and you can go and create under there COMP1073, and it's winter 2017, and it's lesson 12. Go. Bang. And I got these two little lines here that I want to grab. And what I'm going to do here is stop this for a second, clear the screen, git init, git add dot, git commit, -m, initial commit. And then I'm going to paste those two lines, and if everything goes well, then we're going to, basically push everything up to the remote. If I refresh, you can see now that I've got one commit, and that's everything you need to get going with GitHub. Any questions around setup? This is all the setup process. By the way, review is started for your final exam. This is what it's looking like, right? You should understand all the piece parts to your application right now, right? Because we're not just building out HTML and CSS pages. Notice the HTML and CSS so far in this course have been minimal, right? Not a lot of HTML or CSS, right? I'm focusing on just JavaScript here. And this specifically, this library, we're going to use for almost no other CSS or HTML today. Just that one tag, canvas, and the div tag that surrounds it. That's it, right? Why is that? Because, right, what we want to try and do is I want to focus on this one thing and nothing else. And this is kind of this intro. You can add a topic, if you will, here as well. You can say intro to CreateJS, right? Done. Intro to CreateJS, manage topics. Here's my description. I can edit my description. Intro to CreateJS with TypeScript. There we go. Cool. Right, so we got some really cool things happening. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue.